All right, so welcome to the Eleiko Strength Talk. We are proud to announce that this is the first live webinar we've done here in the Eleiko Sweden headquarters here in Halmstad. We are here with our master educators. We're doing a training all this week, so we thought we'd take the opportunity to show you some of the things that we do from an education standpoint so you can witness it firsthand. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the deadlift. We're going to have two of our master educators who you will meet here soon. They're going to be taking two people through. We have a male and a female with two different body types. So you can see how we teach and how we coach, observe, and coach people in a power lift for both the conventional and the sumo. So before we get to all that stuff, just some real quick administrative things. First off, in your toolbar, whether you're on a phone or whether you're on a computer, you'll see that there's a question tab, and that's where you can go and ask questions. We highly and strongly urge you to ask us questions because we want to make sure that this is specific to what you want to do. We're going to show you the process that we use, as I said, but then we want to get questions that you may have relative to you or people that you may coach. So in order to best find out kind of who you are, we're going to ask a few polls here for a second, and just to find out what it is. So the first poll is basically, what we want to know is this your first Eleiko Strength Talk, yes or no? And I'm joined here by Patrick, who's our educational manager for the tactical division of our stuff, and he'll give me the answers when they pop up.
All right. It looks like we are 50-50.
Okay.
With about 80% of you that voted. Thank you.
So thank you for the new people who showed up, and for those who are returning, thank you again for your support for Eleiko Education. We deeply appreciate that. The next thing we want to know is which of the following best describes who you are. So are you a fitness enthusiast? Are you an athlete? Are you a coach? Are you a trainer? Are you other? Are you an owner operator? Which one of these best defines who you are or represents who you are? And survey says
it looks like we have about 70% of you that have registered your vote here, and we have about 50% coaches and trainers, 42% athletes, and about 10% licensed professionals.
Excellent. So thank you again for that. And the last poll that will be also very important is, how many of you are competitive weightlifters? Survey says
looks like we have about 37% saying yes and about 63-64% saying no.
Okay, fantastic. So again, I strongly urge, as we go through this process, whether you're a competitor or not, and thank you for all your participation, by the way, please ask questions that are relative to you. The master educators that I'll introduce to you here in a second are both highly world level competitors and coaches. So we have an excellent master educator team, and they're going to be walking you through this. Now, before we start, I'll first introduce myself. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Rodney Korn. I'm the Director of Education here at Eleiko. Been here about 7 years and thoroughly enjoy it, as you can see why. This is one of the perks of the industry. The other perk is to be able to be associated with some incredible people, which is the master educator team, besides Patrick, who I get to work with all the time, is the master educator team. So the master educator coaches are going to be coaching some of our master educators. So we're going to walk you through. Now, what we're going to do in this particular session here is we're going to show you how we teach and coach the powerlifting, especially in the deadlift, using our processes. So we have systems and processes that we use. The overarching system that we use for performance is, it's called ability, complexity, and perception. And you've seen this, if you're returning, in multiple webinars that we've done, because this is the theme that we have. We have to know somebody's ability in order to put the right amount of complexity or challenge on them, so we get the right perception, which is ultimately how they're empowered to increase their performance. But the process that we're going to use to coach and observe is called equipment, position, and action. So in this particular case, we call it EPA, but in this particular case, the equipment is going to be a barbell. as you see, because we're going to be talking about a deadlift, both to teach someone who may not know very much or haven't been well accustomed to this lift yet, or for people who are competitors. So either way, it's still going to help you. And so the P is the position. This is the setup. And it's going to have a stance, and it's going to have a grip, and it's going to have the relationship of the body to the bar, and then it's going to have how do we create tension. And so they're going to run through that, and then the action is the actual lift itself. And so each of our coaches are going to run both of our athletes through this, so you can see it on two different people, two different body types, and two different, both male and female. So I'm going to bring in our coaches right now. So these are our master educators. This is Clinton Lee, and this is Dan Edwards. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So Clinton, if you go ahead and start.
Hi, my name is Clinton. So I've been powerlifting for close to 11 years now. For the last 10 years, I've competed in the highest level in powerlifting, which is the IPF. So last year, I was able to have the opportunity to compete with the strongest in the whole world, competing in prime time with people for the likes of Austin Perkins and Fan Jinjia. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and can't wait to share with you guys how the Eleiko system can be integrated for you guys and learn the sumo deadlift.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan. I've been powerlifting for about the same time, 12 years. I've been a coach powerlifting for 10 years. I've coached lifters to the highest levels, international competitions, both as masters in equipped lifting and raw lifting. I'm not such a fantastic lifter as Clinton. I'm still kind of strong. I think maybe as strong as Clinton. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to taking you through the conventional deadlift today.
All right. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. So Clinton, you and I are going to exit stage left, and then we're going to bring on our first competitor, Dan. Table's all yours.
All right. Okay. All right, guys. So we're going to go through the conventional deadlift with Sam. What I'm going to do with him first is tell him and show him before he then does it himself. And we're going to start with the stance, grip, body bar relationship, and tension. All right, Sam. So in terms of the grip, in terms of the stance, when we approach the barbell, we want to make sure that our feet are directly under our hips. And there can be some individual differences. If you're a bigger person, you might want to go slightly wider. If you're smaller, you may even come slightly narrower. But just as a start point, we go directly under the hips. In terms of the toe angle, most of the time we're going to be facing kind of directly forward, but we could also ever so slightly angle them outwards. Again, it's about personal preference, and when we get you on the barbell, we'll establish that. Then in terms of the grip, we have a few options. We have a mixed grip, we have a hook grip, and we don't really use the double overhand grip because that makes grip a limiting factor. So when you come out, we'll get you to choose either mixed grip or a hook grip. When we grip the barbell, we're going to make sure that our hands are directly underneath our shoulders in the straightest line possible, okay? We're not going to come too wide. We're not going to come too narrow, just directly our thighs, okay? Next, in terms of the body bar relationship, when you're stood next to the bar, okay, a general rule of thumb would be that the bar is going to cover the laces on your shoes. If you were a taller guy, which unfortunately you are not, then you may want to stand a little bit further back. But general rule of thumb, your shoelaces, whether you tie them up, is a good start point. When I come down to the bar, in that start position, what I am looking for are for my arms to be perpendicular to the floor and the bar to be in contact with the shins, okay? So that would look like so. Bar in contact with the shin, arms perpendicular to the floor, armpit over the bar, okay? Next, final step, mate, is how we create tension, okay? So in terms of tension, we have a few areas. We have the lower body, we have the midsection, and then we have the shoulders, okay? To create tension through the floor and connect to the bar means that we can transfer force effectively, okay? So here what we're gonna do to create tension with the feet, we're gonna imagine grabbing the floor with your toes at like a 3 out of 10 intensity. And then what we're gonna do to make sure that our legs and our hips have some stability, we're going to just think about making sure that the knees track the toes, and we can get like this really slight corkscrew action, okay? Next, we have the brace. This is going to stabilize the trunk. Here with the trunk, we have the brace in 3 components. We have these deep muscles. To get those, we want to perform a Kegel. So if you've never performed one of those before, I want you to imagine trying to stop yourself from peeing mid-flow, okay? That kind of seals the bottom, okay? Next, we have the external muscles here, the abs. And what you're going to do there is you're going to kind of contract those, okay? You're going to squeeze. You're going to almost think about pushing out. Then we have the Valsalva maneuver, okay, which is taking a big breath in and then going to exhale, not letting yourself and kind of crunching down. When you do all 3 of those things, you create this real rigid torso, okay? Next, then, the final thing is the shoulders and how we create tension here. We're not thinking about overly retracting. We're not thinking about squeezing here. We're going to keep it neutral, and we're going to actually use the bar to kind of lengthen the arms and create tension through the upper back. Okay, so if I show you what that's going to look like, then I'm going to set my brace, I'm going to grip, my stance is correct, shins on the bar. I'm going to create tension by grabbing the floor, twisting my quads, lengthening the arms of the bar. Easy, all right? Okay, you're up, mate. So, what's the first thing we're going to do, Sam? Yes, we're going to take the stance. So, feet directly under your hips. That looks about right, mate. How's that feeling? Yeah? Good. Do you want to turn the toes out, or are you feeling comfortable with them directly forward?
Yeah, just a touch, that's fine.
Yeah? Perfect. Okay. Grip. Are you going to go with a mixed grip? Are you going to go with a hook grip?
I'll go mixed grip.
You're going to go mixed grip, yeah? Okay. So, do you have a preference?
I'll go right hand over left hand.
Yeah, one will feel more natural when you do this. You don't have to force it, but one will feel more natural. Okay, cool. So hands directly outside your thighs. You're going to just kind of reach down for me and just get a feel for that, see what that's like. Yeah, okay. So this one I want you to bring in ever so slightly. It's a little bit wider than the other. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. Okay, now just stand up for me without the barbell. Great. Next then, body bar relationship in that start position, okay? So as we get down to the bar, you're gonna hinge for me. So you're gonna set the hip backwards, and from there, you're just gonna squish yourself down. Good. Cool, shins are in contact with the bar, arms are perpendicular to the floor. Fantastic. Good, stand up without the barbell. Great. Next then, we're gonna create your tension. So how we do that? Toes? Yep. Knees, twist those quads. Yep, great. Brace for me. Kegel, Valsalva, abs, good. Yes. Now, get down to the bar and we're going to tension the shoulders when we're down at the bar. Good. So you're going to let the bar and weight of the bar lengthen the arms. Yeah, good. Fantastic. You feeling tight there, Sam? Amazing, mate. Cool. Stand up. Perfect. Perfect. So that was a really good example, step-by-step, of taking Sam into a really great deadlift, conventional deadlift setup position. Wicked, mate. I'm going to ask you to just stand off over there. Next up, I'm going to bring Najia. Okay, so here we're going to run through the same thing. She has heard all of my explanations that I did there. So I'm not going to have to explain everything to her again. I'm just going to tell her, okay, let's get into your stance. Let's find your grip. Let's get that body bar relationship set, and let's find tension. All right, Najia. So let's get your stance right. Okay, so how are we going to go? Directly under the hips. Okay, so Najia is tall. She has long legs. Typically, females have slightly wider hips, so they may want to stand slightly wider as a more natural feeling. Okay, does that feel about good for you? Yeah, perfect. Toes slightly out. Okay, cool. Perfect. Next, then we're going to think about your grip. Are you going to go for hook grip? Are you going to go for double under over? Hook grip. Okay, nice. A sucker for pain. Amazing. So you are just going to, again, make sure that those arms are directly down. Good. If you stand a little bit closer to the bar for me, just so we can get that kind of grip feeling. So If you have a smaller individual, smaller frame, chances are when they go down to grip the bar, they might have one or two fingers that aren't on the knurling. And that's absolutely fine as long as they chalk up well and the majority of their fingers are on the knurling. So, Najee, if you just go down and grab the bar, hands close to your thighs, yeah, we can see there you've got one finger that's on the smooth, right? Perfect. Okay, just stand up for me. Amazing. Okay, so that's the stance, that's the grip. Next, we're going to get that body bar relationship. So the first thing we have to do is make sure that you are stood in a good enough position away from the bar to allow yourself to have that nice kind of perpendicular arm to the floor, armpit over the bar. So I'm going to say stand a little bit closer for me. Great. Now you're going to hinge backwards, and then you're just going to squish yourself down to the bar. When you grab the bar, those shins should be in contact with the bar, and those arms are perpendicular to the floor. Fantastic. All right, just stand up without the barbell for me. Amazing. Next thing is the tension. So toes, you're going to grab the floor ever so slightly. You're going to just make sure that those knees are tracking the toes by like slightly corkscrewing out. You're going to set your brace. Kegel, abs, Valsalva maneuver. Great. Now, arms straight down. We're going to tension the shoulders when you're on the barbell. So let's go down into your start position for me. Good. Now you're going to lengthen the arms by using the weight of the bar. Perfect. Good. And just hold that. Arms perpendicular to the floor. Shins in contact with the bar. Are you feeling tight? Amazing. Good. Stand up for me. Perfect. Okay. How did that feel? Felt good? Yeah. Great. I'm glad. Good. So what we're now going to do, now that we've got... Oh, please feel free. If you want to ask some questions, now is the time to fire them out on anything related to that setup procedure.
So we'll pause for a second if you guys have some questions that you're typing in. So if you have anything relative to how to set up for a deadlift, the conventional style, please type that in now, and we'll get to those right now while it's fresh in your mind. Otherwise, we'll move to the action. So we'll wait just a few more seconds. Okay, looks good. Okay, so, looks good. Dan, so Dan,
yes.
Here we go.
Yeah, no questions?
No questions.
Amazing. I must have nailed it. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, hold on. One just came in.
All right.
Do you need to have weightlifting shoes, or can you go barefoot?
Great question. So weightlifting shoes, if we're talking about with a heeled, an elevated heel, are actually going to not be good for you when you deadlift. Why? Well, it will put your center of mass backwards. And what you're going to find is when you go down to the bar, to get the position, you're going to actually have to lean forward. In terms of what that is going to result in terms of your body bar relationship, it's going to mean that your shoulders are really high over the bar. Arms won't be perpendicular to the floor. You're going to be leaning forward. What that then typically results in is that as you begin to initiate the pull, your hips are going to get thrown forward, your shoulders are going to continue to go forward, and you're going to be really, really off balance. The opposite thing might happen. You might sit a little bit too low into the squat, where you're there because your balance point is backwards, allowing you to do so. And what will happen then is that your arms will no longer be perpendicular to the bar, they'll actually be behind the bar. And as soon as you begin to lift, you'll get thrown forwards, again, getting off balance. So my advice is, if you don't have like a deadlift slipper or something like that, you go barefoot. It's going to allow you to manage your center of mass much better. It is going to allow you to push straight down, which we're going to cover in a second. You're going to get a much better position when you get set up.
Excellent. Thank you for that question. Another question, Dan. This is a good one.
Yeah.
So for bracing, would you find gathering your brace at the top or the bottom of the setup to be best? And part two, is there a general consensus or based on each individual?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So a lot of people are going to have a different preference, but the way I like to do it is I take like a mini brace at the top. When I go down and grab the bar, I will then try and create the wedge, which trying to create more tension. And as I lift my hip and I pull myself into position, I'm then going to finish my brace. Some people, they like a more kind of grip and rip style deadlift where they set the brace at the top, go down and pick it up. That's not my preference. I don't believe you can build as much tension there. Other examples where you might not want to brace at the bottom, if you have a lifter, a client that is quite big, they carry a lot of their weight out in front of them, they might find it really hard in terms of creating space to get down to the bar, and actually bracing when a lot of their tissue is pressing on their thighs is going to be quite challenging. So in those instances, I typically encourage a little bit more of a brace at the top, getting down to the bar and spending as little time down there as possible. So in simple terms, yes, it is very much dependent on the individual. My personal preference when I work with lifters is that they take a little brace at the top and then they really maximize the brace when they're at the bottom.
Okay, excellent. Great question. Another good question here. Are there specific cues or instructions you can give lifters to help them maintain a neutral spine in their start position? I find a lot of lifters tend to round their back or have significant posterior tilt when they lower start position.
Yeah, great. So in terms of cueing, this one can be quite challenging because sometimes they just lack the ability to get in that position. So cueing them might not help. What you can do is you can take them away from the bar first. You can use some kind of movement drill. So you might be using a dowel rod placed behind their back, and they have to maintain contact all the way through to really work on their hinge. If you can get them to feel that movement without the weight with the pipe, you can then send them back to the barbell and get them to try and feel it. What you can also do is elevate the barbell. So now we start to manipulate the complexity with the equipment that we're using. We can elevate the bar so they have less distance to travel. So if they get down here and they're doing this, if we elevate the bar and we can get them into the position that they are able to maintain their hinge, that is going to be really good. In terms of cueing, if we set the brace at the top, we get into that neutral position, and then we just try and hold it. But like I said, typically people are in that position because they don't have the awareness. We have to create the awareness outside in a less stressful position first.
Excellent. We'll do one more question, then we're going to move on to the action for this one because we have multiple lifts that we want to get through. So another great question here. How do you know if your hips are in the right position and not too high or too low to start?
So when you start to perform the action, you will start to feel if when you pull, if your hips are too high, you're going to start to feel that you get into this kind of immediate hip back, knees come backwards, shoulders are over the bar. If you feel like when you start to perform the action, your hips are too low, you will find that the bar has to come around you. You might start to round more. A simple one, if you film from the side, you want to make sure that your shins are in contact with the bar and your arms are perpendicular to the floor, shoulders and armpits over the bar. If you are not achieving that, chances are your hips are a little bit too high or a little bit too low.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. All right.
Amazing. All right. Thanks for the question, guys. Now we're going to get into the action. So now that we've established a really great setup position, the next thing to do is execute the lift. So Naja, if you stand here for me, I'm going to quickly demonstrate this for you. Sam is also going to be watching as I do this. So I get into my stance. I make sure that I'm clear on where my grip is going to be. Body bar relationship, I set my tension at the top. The first thing I'm going to do is push the ground away and then hinge through at the top to finish. In reverse on the way down, okay? So the first thing we're trying to do once we're in our setup is push the floor away like a leg press. In this position, you should see that your shoulders and hips remain in a consistent angle. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just do that push off the floor to the knee. If you come forward for me. All right, so take your stance. Sure we're familiar with the grip, body bar relationship, set your tension. Good, so we're going to find that neutral position, great. Going to come back a little bit here, perfect. Arms are perpendicular to the floor. So all you're going to do now, chin up a little bit, you're going to push the world away and down. Good, perfect. And again, set your brace, tension, and push. Beautiful, down and relax. Perfect. That looks really good. How did it feel?
Felt solid.
Felt solid?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so all we're going to do now to finish that off, once you get to your knee, we're going to go slow to the knee, and then we're just going to squeeze the glutes, bring the hip to the bar, shoulders behind the bar when you stand tall. Okay? Let's go. So, stance, grip, body bar relationship, tension, and slow to the knee and hip through. And when you can hear the angle changes as she goes, and now we're going to come down. Exactly the same in reverse. Perfect. Tension, push the world away and hip through. Squeeze the glutes and down, the same in reverse. Amazing. Good job. How'd that feel?
Smooth.
Yeah? Yeah, really good. Fantastic. Okay. Good job, Nadia. All right. I'm going to bring Sam out now, okay? And we're going to go through the same thing. All right, Sam. So remember, mate, take your stance. Good grip. Body bar relationship and tension. Push the world away and hinge through. Hinge to stand. Now let's go. Good. Down the same in reverse. Perfect. Good. And do another one for me, mate. Good. Push and through. Amazing. Looking really good. So these guys are really great deadlifters. What I can see with Sam, bar staying nice and close to his body, the hip and shoulder angle are staying consistent in that push to the knee, and then he's hinging through really, really well. So some fantastic deadlifts here. Now remember, guys, these loads are a lot lighter than their 1 rep maxes. So when they are performing these movements, they are absolutely performing them with great form. If we were to start loading these up, they would start to see some breakdowns, but this is the lens that we are looking for. We are looking for the stance, the grip, the body bar relationship and tension, and this can inform the coaching corrections that I make. All right, good job. Nice one, Sam. Well done, mate. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So there is the conventional deadlift. We've gone through the action for that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to start writing them in, and we'll start to answer them as many as we can before we want to move on to the sumo. Let's see. So Dan, question here. Why do people tend to let the bar away from their shins when performing multiple deadlift reps?
Okay, so this is going to be something to do with them not getting into a great setup position, okay, a great start position. So typically as they're going through reps, as they stand up, they might be pushing that bar away and they drop down so that it doesn't hit their shin, and all of a sudden the bar is away from them. Now, that is going to happen if people aren't concentrating on how they lower the barbell and then how they reset, how they get that position reset. A really good way to kind of prevent this happening is saying to someone, hey, you're going to do 1 rep, you're going to put it down, you're going to then just stand back up to reset everything, go back down to grab the bar. This can be a really effective way to make people more accurate in their setup position.
Okay, we'll do one more question here, Dan. This is a good one. Are there any cues you can give if the person's hips shift up too soon, especially when the weight gets heavier or they fatigue? Or is this a sign of muscle weakness in a certain area?
Sure. So we can look at this a few ways. It's kind of You could say, well, maybe their quads aren't very strong, but ultimately the cue that we're going to use there is to push the floor away like you're performing a leg press. This is going to really make sure that you are pushing with the quads in the initial stage. We also want to make sure that we are connected to the bar, that we've created tension with the bar, that we've become one unit. If we've got slack in the system and we begin to pull, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to see that yank on the bar and we're going to see the hip shoot up. So in terms of cueing, it's the one I use with the action. You're going to push the floor away, use those quads. We're also going to think about taking the slack out of the bar by taking tension in the shoulders, by lengthening the arms by using the barbell. In terms of muscle weakness, it may be that you find the quads aren't doing what you want them to do. So training something like a leg press in your deadlift stance could be a really great option.
Okay, excellent. Let's try one more question, and give me 1 second as I sift through here. When do you know to allow a full hip extension on top and when not to? When do you allow for a full hip extension at top and when not to?
So in terms of the question, are you talking about, I'm assuming what you're talking about is that we're in this kind of position, fully extended, stood upright, or kind of like this, not fully extended. If that is the question, well, in terms of competition, if you are a competitor, you absolutely must finish the rep. You must stand tall, hip extended, knees extended, shoulders behind the bar. We want to train to the highest standard possible if we're a competitor, because all the reps that we do end up influencing our top end lifts. So if I'm working with a competitor, I always have them finish fully extended. If I see someone I'm working with generation and they don't quite fully extend because they're tired, it's okay every now and again, but again, we want to make sure that we're training to the highest standard possible. So I would always be encouraging people to finish their reps. Sometimes people just get a bit carried away and they go fast and down, and it may look like they've not extended, but to answer your question in short, train to the highest standard possible, whether you're a competitor or not, and that means fully extending your hip at the top.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Dan, and thank you guys for your questions. You guys are really active, and we deeply appreciate that. I'm going to first and foremost apologize because we may not be able to get to every single question because we're getting a lot of questions, and we want to get through both of these lifts. So we're going to get into the sumo. So we're going to have Dan. You're going to
Thank you so much, guys.
Left, and we're going to have Clinton come on in.
Thank you, Dan. So Dan did a phenomenal job to help explain how the system is like. And right now, we're just going to be going through the sumo basics. So Sam, I'm going to show you how to get ourselves into the right position. And this also means the setup. So we're going to first talk about the stance, the throw, the grip, power body relationship, and last but not least, just to get ourselves into a nice, right? So in contrary from sumo conventional, a sumo typically as a starting point, we want to be able to reach in a position where when we are close to our starting position, our shins are vertical, perpendicular to the ground. And another way to check this out is to make sure that your heels are right on top. Your knee is right on top of your heels. So of course, there are variations where elite powerlifters go all the way to the end of the bar. But in this case, for you, we will try out the vertical shift. Okay. In terms of our toe angle, how I like to teach this and guide is we will first put ourselves with our toes forward and we'll get ourselves to the starting position where the bar is. If your big toe is starting to come off the ground, it is a sign that it needs to be turned up. So typically, the toe angle will direct us to roughly 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. Right? So later we will try and find out where's your start. Yeah. In terms of grip, as what Dan has mentioned, as what Dan has mentioned, you can use an overhand grip, you can use mixed grip, and you can use foot grip. So I've seen you doing the mixed grip just now, and we can just follow that. All right. So in the context of a sumo, our grip will be typically inside the legs and in a shoulder width position. It is exactly the same as how you will set up normally, just now your stance is a little bit wider, right? So now we have got through the stance and the grip. So we're gonna look at bar body relationship, which is one of the most important things in the sumo. Okay, so bar body relationship is, firstly, we want our midfoot to be right aligned with the bar. So one good way to understand this is like how Dan suggested, our shoelace will be the sign of your midfoot. So if you look down in the setup and you can't see your shoelaces, this means that you're okay. So now we have our midfoot and the bar. Next thing we want to go is to get our arms aligned with the bar as well. So shoulders will be right on top of the bar. Okay. In this position, it will mean that we are all in a aligned position. Okay. So this is how we get the bar body. Okay. Right. So last but not least, I'm going to share with you how we create tension. So we have briefly discussed how to create the proper brace. Another way to figure out how to brace is to just put your hands by the side and do this together. Okay. When we first perform the Kegel, you could almost feel that the whole pelvic rotates a little bit into a neutral position. Next, you're going to take it in and push against the hand. So now you get a very nice, compact, nice and solid experience, just like what my colleague has shared with you. All right. So now that we have figured out the grip, in order to get tension for the sumo deadlift, we will first start with the foot. We will think about gripping the floor. So this will create a little bit of a supination, and your knee will start to track slightly outwards. Next, we create our bracing. So just a little bit first, get our arms aligned and sit ourselves. All right. So now we need to build a connection with the bar as part of the tension. When we go down, we pull against the bar slightly until we feel a click of the bar. Okay, so now we have developed tension with the bar. So from here, we're going to go through another bracing. Get nice and tight. Okay. All right. So that's how we set up the gym. Okay. Right. Okay. First of all, we'll try to establish the stance. Okay. So would you like to just squat down for me in this position? Good. So roughly, we can see that the kneecap is aligned just on top of the heel. And we have a vertical shin and perpendicular to the floor. This is good. Do you feel stable right here? Yeah. Or you can briefly turn your toes out a little bit more. When you feel your big toe onto the ground? Yes. You feel more stable? Yeah. Right. So we found our stance and our toe angle. Good. So from the conventional, you already know that your grip is going to be just shoulder width apart. We can go straight into the bar body relationship. All right. So let's get under the bar. Following the same stance, following the same toe angle. Okay, so what we're going to do is visualize your arm, your shoulders align with the bar. You're going to bend your knees slightly and sit down. So friends out there, you can see that the arm literally goes straight down, and then the kneecap is right on top of the bar. And from this angle, you'll be able to see that the bar is right on top of the midfoot. This is the alignment that we want to try and get. And this will help to set our hip in the right position. All right. Okay, you can stand back up first. Okay. So now you can follow my steps and we're going to build tension with the bar. Okay, first of all, foot. Slightly grip the floor into the ground. So this will create a little bit of external rotation from the knee, just a bit. Okay, next, raise 30%. Okay. Following the line, we slowly get ourselves into position. Good. So I'm just going to need you to bring our hips up to get the arms aligned. Good. So from here, pull the bar slightly until you hear click. Perfect. So once you get tension from here, do a brace 100% for me. And this is tension. Good? Yeah. Right. Thank you. Okay, so we've just gone through the positioning and setup for Sam. Now we're gonna try and find out how it will look in terms of the difference for Nadia.
Clinton, as we swap, question for you. When and why would you recommend a sumo style to a client?
So it is always good to learn and diversify both techniques, especially for powerlifting. If you are new to the sport, being able to understand the movement will help us learn the different kind of muscle groups involved to produce the movement. So of course, my recommendation is if you are new to the sport, start off with a conventional because it's much easier to get into position, much easier to move, and it builds more general overall lower body strength. And then after that, we'll start going into the sumo to try and develop a little bit more into quads and also glute adherence.
One more question before we move on. Do you exhale, one, through the sticking point on the way up, two, at the top when fully extended, or three, through the sticking point on the way down?
As much as when the bar is moving, the general rule of thumb is when the bar is moving, you hold tension. This is to protect the body and the integrity of your whole system itself. So I would say you can either reset your breath at the top or reset your breath at the bottom. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
All right. Carry on.
Carry on.
All right. So as you can see here, Nadia is of a very different profile in terms of leverages. So let's take a look at how the difference of in terms of what we see over here when she set up for the sumo. All right. So I hope you know how to set it up, but I will walk you through. First of all, the stance.
You want me close to the bar?
Yeah, we can get close to the bar. So Nadia has roughly established her stance to be as such. Can you roughly go into the bottom so that we can find out that your foot is in a good position? All right, good. Okay, so now we go get our grip in place, so shoulder width apart. All right, so a little bit of a kegel, so we will cut the hips a little bit. Okay, so from here, what we're gonna do is to corkscrew the feet a little bit, pull a little bit until you feel the kick on the bar. Good, and then you brace. So that is the starting position. So if you hold here, you will notice that if you guys remember how Sam's sumo deadlift looks like, you will notice that for Nadia, she seems to have a slightly more upright position. That is mainly because her torso is by nature shorter than Sam and longer legs and longer arms. Right, thank you, Nadia.
Yeah.
Right. So any questions at this point?
Yes, we got a question from Diego. Thank you, Diego. How do you cue someone who rounds the upper back when creating tension, lifting the bar from the floor?
Now, it's a great question. So I'm gonna use this bar as a demonstration. So as a guideline, especially if you are new, we always encourage the spine to stay in a neutral state. When the bar goes into too much flexion, you will fall into the pattern where your knees will lock out first and the hips will lock out. But in cases where the load is going to be extremely heavy, most of the time, when the upper back goes into flexion, your lumbar will go into flexion as well. And when you hit knee extension, you'll find that there's no way for you to leverage to finish the movement. Right? So at all times, we want to try and get ourselves in a neutral spine position through using the kegel and proper bracing as what Dan has demonstrated. So if we get into this position with a break, align ourselves, this is a solid neutral position. Well, this is a little bit too much. Cool? Right.
Thank you.
So we're gonna move on to the action part. Since Nadia is here, we'll just go through a review. So I would like you to stand over here so that I can demonstrate what we're about to do. Right? So again, stance, toe angle, grip, bar body relationship, tension. Now what we're gonna try and do is to same as conventional, produce the leg drive. Drive into the ground while holding our torso lean angle. So this means that our feet and our shoulders will come up at the same time, almost like a leg press. Okay? So, tension, raise, stand up to the knee. We're going to pause for a sec so that we know that the next step of the whole movement is to bring our hips forward. All right? Once we're done, we're going to slowly control and bring our way down. Okay? So, Nadia, we're going to give it a shot. We'll first do 2 reps. Pause at the knee. So, we're going to go up, go down, go up, go down. And the next 2 reps, we'll perform the 2 reps. All right? So, step by step. Stance looking good. Grip. Perfect. So, click, pay attention, raise. And then we're going to hold this torso and good. Up. Set the brace. Up again. Down. Beautiful. So now we'll do hold, complete the movement, then down. All right. Okay. Tension. Knee, hips. Solid. Down. One more. So thank you, Nadia. So the whole motion itself, in terms of the action, what we are just trying to make sure is that the shoulder and the hip come up at the same time until the bar is almost at the knee or above. Then we bring our hips forward. At any circumstances, if our body loses its position, then you will find that it is very hard to complete the movement in the right way. All right. So Sam, you want to give you a shot?
As we transition here, if Lucas is saying that he's having trouble at the clearing his knees with the barbell and he's scraping his knees, is there any adjustments that he should make?
Yes. So
Thank you, Lucas.
sometimes you may want to look at where your bar-body relationship is. If you tend to scrape, most of the time you want to take a look at whether or not the spacing between the bar and the shin is in the right place. What does this mean? If you are too close to the bar, it will mean that your midfoot is in front of the bar. So when you get yourself set up, you feel like everything starts to get congested. So when you start to execute the pull, you feel that everything is scraping through you, trying to establish the balance. However, you set yourself slightly behind with your knees locked. When we get ourselves into the bottom position, our midfoot will be directly under the bar. So this will mean that when you produce the leg drive, you don't feel like you are scraping it through. Third way to make sure that to prevent this is to make sure that the arms stay aligned with the bar. If we choose to pull our shoulders behind, then there's a very high tendency where you'll scratch yourself and hurt yourself. Right? So take care of all this part. As the Eleiko system suggests, pay attention to the bar-body relationship and you'll be good. All right. So Sam. So we try to establish the same stance. Toe angle is good. Okay, hold on for a sec. We just want you to slightly bring your hips up and then corkscrew your feet a little bit. Good. So with good pressing, we're going to pull it up to the knee. Well done. Down. So shoulders and hip this way. And we're going to come up together. Great. And down. Okay. Now we're going to do up, hold, and complete the movement. So we start with the legs. Let's go. Leg drive, hips through. Well done. Down, control. Again. Leg drive, and then hips. So you can see how the whole movement is like. Throughout the whole motion, the alignment stays. Job set. Right. So any questions?
Let's see here. We have a question about how to avoid squatting while deadlifting. Most common problems like how much hips are down or up.
Yeah. So again, bar-body relationship. Feet foot bar, knee, and most of the time, here's the problem with most people, is they will just sit straight down into position. So what this will happen is, although it looks like the arm is straight on top, forming a straight line, actually, if you just bring your hips back a little bit, you can still maintain that straight line. The general rule of thumb, as we go into a little bit more intricate of sumo deadlift, is we want to make sure that our kneecap stays under the hip. This will put us in a more stronger position where hip hinge is present, so that we can produce the leg drive straight from here. Then we can use the hips. If we go all the way under, it will put us in a very tight position at the bottom, and you'll feel that it is hard for you to produce leg drive from there. Okay, so sumo, as much as we bring our legs out to create a movement, we still need to have some sort of hip hinge present so that we can produce as much leg drive as possible.
Thank you. And except push the floor like a leg press, do you have any other cues to use more quads for the first part of the movement?
Okay, so essentially the whole idea is to use the quad, right? So you can either use a leg drive motion, or sometimes what I like to do is to just sit from that position. So from here, if leg press doesn't work for you, most of the time it's also because you are not in the midfoot position. Sometimes you might be too much on your forefoot. So just to help you guys understand, this is not midfoot. You can see, midfoot is right here. So if you stack your stance properly, stance, toe angle, and get into position, you will feel that the leg press is a upward motion. So if leg press doesn't work, maybe you can try out leg press and feel like you are going in the upward motion. Or just stand up.
We have another question here on how do you correct hip twisting during the lift? And what could be any possible reasons for this?
Hip twisting. So it is quite interesting, but we have to look at many different angles of it. First of all, before I can give you a solution, I must see how the lift works. But from my guess, what can be happening is you're holding a mixed grip and one side of the arm is going lower than the other. So please do check and make sure that the arms are straight through and under so that you can get a stable position at the bottom. If not, if it's a little bit down, you'll start to see yourself rotating to one side.
There's one more good question here is, should the neck have extension or in a neutral position while deadlifting?
Okay, so my recommendation is to keep ourselves in a neutral position. Okay, so if we look all the way up like this, it can influence how the position of your hip will be. If we go slightly neutral, then you are able to bring your hips in a more higher position than the knees. So this is where we want to try to go in.
Yeah, we got one more question about the grip. Do you have a preference or is there a difference on when you should use an overhand grip or a double overhand grip or a mixed grip?
Okay, so if you are new and you are going through starting out with the barbell at the start, I would recommend using double overhand first until your strength of the grip has come to its limitation. Then we can look at exploring the mixed grip. For the sake of just going through training, especially if you are not intending to compete anytime soon, you can still think about looking to alternate your grip just so that we don't face the issue of over rotating to one side. However, when it comes to competition, in my case, if we choose to go for a mixed grip, it is always towards the side where we are the most comfortable at. So for me, it's in this position. Ultimately, if you are like Nadia, my colleague over here, and who enjoys seeking pain, then you'll go into a hook grip position. So of course, there are pros and cons with regards to that. For someone like me, competitor, I used to go into a mixed grip, but I always find issues like you rotating to one side. So in order to solve the problem, I went into hook grip just to avoid having that kind of issues again.
Awesome. And this might be a question for both of you here. on if I want to master in both conventional and a sumo deadlift, then how do I design a week program, or should I design a week with both of them, one of them? What would be your strategy?
Maybe we can come up with our own answers.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, I'll go first. So, in my opinion, there is no reason why you couldn't develop both at the same time. I would, if you knew that you were stronger in conventional deadlift, I would have you do deadlift twice a week. Make sure they're set far enough apart to allow yourself to recover from each. But I would still have your main deadlift day, the heaviest session, be your conventional. And then on your lighter day, I would be exploring sumo deadlift. And the way I would do that would be through a variation that is load limiting, allows you to really focus on your positioning and technique. So something like a tempo or a pause is going to be really, really beneficial. So in this case, you would still get your strength work done on your main deadlift day with your conventional stance, your preferred stance. And then on your lighter day, you would still get a training stimulus, but it would be focused on your sumo positioning, your sumo deadlift, and it would allow you to kind of bring that up gradually. Yeah, man.
I have the same sentiments as Dan. However, if you realize that when you're executing the sumo and the sumo, you can move more weights to sumo. I think by all means you can have your primary day altered as a sumo deadlift. But especially if you are a new lifter, we shouldn't shy away from doing conventional deadlift because it is the king of building up pure strength, especially if you are new to the sport.
Great, thank you guys. This is another one, a good one for you guys. What are warm-ups before deadlifting, or some drills that you can do prior to your working sets?
Right. So in terms of the sumo, one of the most important parts where you need to make sure that it is activating is, especially in terms of the glute medius. So one example that I can come up right now is to do a lying side hip raises just to create the recruitment of the glute medius. And like I said, most of the problem with sumo deadlift is people think that it is just all about the legs. There should be consideration of whether or not you are able to hinge. So exercises which requires hinge, something like a staggered stance RDL or RDL, in fact, will help to prime the movement so that when you set up, it will be much natural for you.
Yeah, so I think in terms of if you're trying to if you're trying to learn the skill, I think doing what Clinton said, where you find movements that allow you to explore that. You may want to find some kind of muscle activation drills to do. Something that we've actually been doing here this whole week, learning about. So you have to stay tuned for those kind of courses coming up in whatever area you're in. But there are specific techniques that you can use, which would be a little bit too intense to get through in this question right now. But you can get specific muscles that you feel are going to be important to the deadlift. Hip extensors, erectors, all these kind of things that you can activate in a specific way that are going to prepare you to lift maximally.
So to that point, I'll just bring up one thing. So if you're just standing here, here's something when we were talking about glute medius and he's talking about the muscle activation. So muscle activation is what we use in our readiness and recovery training course. And we've done multiple webinars on that. So you can go back and look in the archives for the webinar on our website through the education. Muscle activation techniques that we use are through Greg Roscoff, and Greg Roscoff is the developer of muscle activation techniques. So this is all of his property IP that he has allowed Eleiko to use and to show in a kind of a self-care process. But to give you an example, if I was just using this, if I was just to simply take my right leg and I moved it back into the plate, and I was just holding it there at a very low level, like a 1 to 2 out of 10. So it's not a maximal thing, because we're not looking for maximal activation. We can do that through other techniques. This is to actually get this muscle to subconsciously turn on. And that's something that we never talk about, you don't hear about, but that's what's in our readiness recovery course. And we've talked about that. So go back and look at the webinar. But if you were just to put your foot kind of in an externally rotated position, which would simulate being in a sumo, and even if it's not sumo, if it's conventional, it'll still activate the posterior aspect of your glute medius. And when you're in that position, you're just going to push lightly into the weight, and it's going to be an isometric contraction. You're going to do that for about 3 times to 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. You could work your way up to 6 by 6. And if you do that properly, low level, not how hard you can do it, but a 10 to 20% of a maximal contraction. So it's extremely low, just enough to where you can feel the muscle turn on. That will actually create that activation. And when you do that, like Clinton has been talking about, when you get yourself into that sumo position, these have to be able to get into that position in order for you to get the legs apart and in order for the adductors to be able to move out. If these don't move or these don't shorten to get you into that position the way they're supposed to, that's where people get really tight adductors. And so that can be a limiting factor. So to Dan's point and to Clinton's point, that's a really powerful exercise to do to prepare you for things when you do some type of split squat, some type of RDL. That will help prepare you for that, which will help prepare you for that lift. Is that good? Any more questions?
Yeah, another programming question here. Another programming question here on how many sets you would recommend per session for either the conventional or sumo.
I think it very much is an it depends question, because whether you're a bigger, stronger lifter or a lighter, smaller, very technically efficient lifter, the answer can be really, really varied. If you're a beginner, you're going to need less. If you're more advanced, you're probably going to need more. I would say, like, if I was programming, just as a very general rule of thumb, if I was coaching somebody that was typically deadlifting twice per week, I might be looking around 6 to 10 working sets on deadlift as a range would be a good option. Clinton, what would you say?
I think I agree with you. So it really depends on where you're at, whether or not you're better at maybe conventional or sumo. So let's say if you're looking at sumo deadlift itself, it's a little bit more comprehensive in terms of setting everything up. Sometimes we'll go for slightly lower repetitions, like reps of 3, since Dan has explained to you guys that the total sets per week can go up to reps of 6 in the context of maybe 3 to 5 reps. So however, if you feel that you can go for a little bit, a few more sets to ingrain the technique into you, I think we can go for a little bit more. So as this, what this suggests is really all about what's the background and the profile of your current stage, which is one of the things that we are aiming to look for as we partner up together to produce a level 2 upgrade with regards to our powerlifting course, so that you can actually learn how to program your based on the profiles that you're working with.
Excellent. Thank you. So, gentlemen, you go ahead and stay there. And on behalf of Eleiko Education, on behalf of the professionalism and the expertise of our 2 master educators and professional powerlifters, we want to thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate your support, and stay tuned for our next webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.